My name is Vanessa Tzoannos and I'm partnering with Dickinson, and today with Frederic Bouthillier we're going to touch bases on the hot EU ETS developments. So, welcome to Greece, Frederic. I hope you had a lovely flight. Before starting with our discussion, could you give us a briefing of Vertis? Frederic is the head of shipping in Vertis.
Yes, good afternoon. The day is going on, and I'd obviously like to thank Nicolas and the whole team for, again, such a great event and gathering, as usual. Thanks very much again, Nicolas and the team. First of all, a few words, obviously, on Vertis Environmental Finance. Basically, Vertis has been in the trading of EUAs since the inception of the system, and we are trading basically for industry, aviation, and now shipping. And I'm head of shipping, as you just mentioned, Vanessa, covering that particular segment. We have Vertis has a direct access to the market, ICE and EEX, and we are basically trading around 50 million units a year with more than 3,000 counterparties, again for industry, aviation, and shipping. Basically, the Vertis is part of the STX group since 18 months, not the South Korean shipyard, but the Dutch-based company, which is one of the largest environmental trading company, and actually one of their latest achievements was to bunker bio-LNG with Hapag-Lloyd in Rotterdam. So we are covering, so to speak, the whole decarbonization chain from the regulatory carbon market, i.e. the EU ETS, to the voluntary carbon market, including biofuel and bio-LNG.
So that's very helpful. So we keep on listening since earlier this morning of what's going on with the EU ETS and different views. So what's your taking since the inception of the EU ETS shipping back in January 2024? What are the main takeaways, challenges, and how do you reckon this will financial impact the shipping companies?
Yes, alors, obviously the inception of the EU ETS to shipping was in Jan 2024. Actually, the inclusion of shipping didn't have a significant impact on EU ETS because actually to compensate the maritime expansion, the EU allocated an extra 78.4 million units to the system through auctions. And at the same time, obviously, as you know, for the first year, there is this phase-in, and the obligation is to surrender only 40% of the emissions produced. So basically, there is a shortfall here. You could say that obviously it's bearish, but at the same time, shipping is really a drop in the ocean, so to speak, when it comes to EU ETS. Keeping in mind that, for example, on a normal daily trading day, the volume traded on spot is around 2 to 3 million, and the volume traded on the benchmark contract, i.e. December 24, is certainly around 22 million units. So obviously, like I said, a drop in the ocean. Just a quick one on the demand side. Obviously, as you probably know, the latest MRV numbers were published in July. Basically, they were, and actually they were modified several times since the first publication in July. Clearly, the amount of emissions has dropped, actually by 6.7 million tons. And we were coming in 22 at 91.4, and we are now for 23 at 84.6. Just as a side comment, a brief one, we expect that the rerouting of the part of the fleet through the Cape of Good Hope due to the situation that was explained before in the Red Sea will produce obviously more emissions because of the additional steaming time. We expect that this, and again, according to Bloomberg, that they estimate the ship rerouting will cause 6% rise in shipping emissions. And if you can, obviously not all the ships going through Cape of Good Hope and being rerouted are calling Europe thereafter, but doing a linear extension of this increase, we can kind of guess or estimate, should I say, that it will be an additional demand of or 5 million tons of CO2 additional demand. But again, 5 million, it's just a couple of days of trading, so this will not be a major element in the topic and in influencing the market.
Still is one of the main challenges that the market will need to face. So with that in mind, how about the pricing?
Alors, certainly the pricing is an important element. I would say, alors, there are three main elements driving the market. Obviously, as usual, the fundamental supply and demand balance. Obviously, it's a regulated market. EU is controlling that market, so to speak, through the auctions to add additional EUs in the market or through the market stability reserve. So they are always able to monitor the amount of what we call total number of allowances in circulation, TNAC. So they are always able to monitor the balance, the fundamental balance. Nevertheless, actually what we have seen is that since summer 23, we've seen a decrease of the price, a bearish approach and impact on the pricing. Basically, this is mainly due to industrial slowdown. The REPowerEU with additional units being put on the market to finance the independence, energetical independence of Europe, the energy complex, and actually a decrease of emissions because in 2023 emissions were decreased in Europe by 15.5%.
This decrease is because of the strategies that the shipping companies have implemented.
Yes, and all across the industry, aviation, everybody is trying to move towards energy efficiency. The second element is obviously the behavior of the compliance entities. Taking advantage of the lower price, they started to hedge in advance, but there is a limit to what they can hedge upfront. So this appetite could come to an end, so to speak. And there is also, I think, a very important element is what we call the big hands or the speculators, so to speak, and traders, the hedge funds. They are obviously playing a crucial role in that segment and market. Actually, last week, what we call the commitment of trader, which is basically the net between the short and the longs, has increased by 51%. And today, actually, the net balance long-short is basically a net short of 21.5 million units. So it shows clearly that the big hands have a fairly bearish outlook. The only element, I mean, one of the points of that bearish outlook is that obviously if suddenly the trend is reversing for whatever reason, like, geopolitical, etc., clearly we could clearly get into a short squeeze meaning that very quickly the price will catch up because of touching the limits and having a steep increase in the price. So that's obviously something we have to monitor very closely.
You mentioned something about speculation. And how about the speculation around the new FuelEU Maritime regulation? Do you think it will complement the EU ETS regulation? What's your take on this?
Obviously, we are talking about two different regulations. Again, I'd like to emphasize the fact that the FuelEU is a regulation, i.e., it will get immediately into each member state legislation. There will be no option to kind of, thank you. There will be no options to kind of adjust on a country per country basis the regulation. Everything, the common ground is basically the Fit for 55 package that we know. The ETS promotes energy saving while FuelEU addresses the fuel technology, so to speak. The ETS mechanism is focusing on reducing emission, whereas FuelEU Maritime addresses the GHG intensity of the fuels on a wake-to-wake basis, which is obviously a big difference with ETS, because ETS is basically tank to wake. And obviously, as by now I believe we all know, the regulation mandates a progressive reduction in the yearly GHG intensity of the energy used on board of the ships, starting with a 2% reduction as from 2025, compared to the baseline, obviously.
That's really interesting. But under the new FuelEU Maritime regulation, there's a blending requirement which might complicate things. What's your take on this?
Sorry?
What is your take on the blending requirement under the FuelEU regulation?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I think, and we heard a bit this element in the previous panels. Clearly, the blending will be the first solution, clearly, and I think whether it's biofuel or bio LNG, and clearly, for example, when you at the very beginning, at least. We have to keep in mind that obviously the legislation FuelEU will start 1st Jan 2025, and for the first 5 years, the requirement is to reduce by 2%, which basically will be easily achieved with B30, even less than that. And actually, the need for biofuel blend will probably, the magic number is probably around 5 to 6%. So if you blend only by 5 to 6% with B30, you will be able to address and achieve these magic numbers of 5%, of 2%, at least for the first 5 years. So that's already something.
And the pooling mechanism, do you think this will help things out?
Clearly, the pooling, more than the banking and borrowing, but the pooling will clearly be a solution.
Could you elaborate to explain how pooling works first?
But basically, it's like in school. You have the good students and the bad students, and basically.
I was always a good one.
You bet. No, clearly the pooling mechanism will work. One important element is that unlike the EU ETS, and that's one of the additional major difference with FuelEU, is that the compliance entity under ETS is the ship owner, unless it's specified in the shipman co with the dock entity holder. Under the FuelEU, the compliant entity is the dock entity holder. So actually, and that's something we are actually right now we have an agreement with Azola, which is the decarbonization arm of Synergy for the trading of EUAs. But we are also discussing a system for the pooling, and the idea will be to, for example, like this bio LNG bunkering of Hapag-Lloyd ships, will join the pool, and then obviously having been in largely long, so to speak, that will cover other ships, even from other owners, joining that pool that will be managed by the dock entity holder, i.e. the technical manager, so that it will compensate, again, the good guys, the good students will compensate the underperforming vessels that are emitting or that are not matching the minimum requirement under the FuelEU Maritime.
Do you think we're going to see a lot of good students collaborating and creating pools just for the purpose of the FuelEU Maritime regulation compliance?
Yeah, I think that's clearly one of the elements. That's one of the elements we are looking forward, and we see that there is certainly a lot of appetite to look at that, and clearly that will for a vessel that goes beyond the annual GHG GHG intensity, you will be able to compensate with, again, vessels that are overperforming. And I think it's a question of finding, for example, and being smart in setting up pools where you will have, for example, LNG ships that are burning, that you can obviously put the bio-LNG that will immediately be overperforming under the FuelEU, and that will enable to compensate with less good performing ships under the FuelEU Maritime.
Conscious of the time, one last question for you. What's your forecast moving forward?
On the price, who am I to say, otherwise I think we will not be sitting here. But generally, on the price, I think it's the volatility of the talking about EUA price is a key element. I would not suggest to ship owners to start generating P&L based on the trading of EUAs, but certainly building up an additional competitiveness edge on proactively entering into that market. I think that would be certainly something to push forward. I would say, talking about EUA price, I think it's very important to monitor what we call the TTF price, the gas price. For example, last week suddenly the news broke that suddenly, as you know, the agreement between Ukraine and Russia for transiting for the transit of gas is ending by the end of this year. So that's why speculators on TTF price are long on gas. And suddenly there was a press release that apparently Ukraine and Azerbaijan signed an agreement, and suddenly the price of TTF dropped significantly, €4, and obviously the price of the EUA followed accordingly. So clearly, again, to be ready to act on such opportunity, I think it's very important. Structurally, that market is built to push up the market and the price of EUAs above 100. It's not if, it's only when. It's a matter of time.
And how about the strategies that the shipping companies will implement? Any ideas, any forecasting?
Sorry, I didn't.
Any strategies? Do you think that what kind of strategies that then the shipping owners will go for?
I think they will try to put together strategies that are helping them to keep their competitive edge, clearly, with a wise approach of the market. I think it's very important for them to understand how it works. You can't operate in a market like the EU ETS without understanding what is driving the market, what are the drivers of that market, and that's an important cost element today, even though the cost is passed on to the charterers in most of the cases. But I think it's very important to be very well acquainted with the way this market is moving. Clearly,
I think your forecast is sort of optimistic in a way.
That if we are in shipping, it's because we are optimistic. Otherwise, we would be out of it already.
And I'm sure you're going to find them some good finance, right?
Yeah, that's right. Let's hope for.
I always like to end in a good way, in a good sentiment, so we can see what the future brings.
Yeah, future is bright, I would say.
Especially in Greece. So thank you very much for being with us today.